Our next guest has been on the show. I think this is his third or fourth time. The last couple times he came on, he was gracious to come on with us and didn't have all the best news to give us. We have good news now for the Illinois High School Sports Association. Announced yesterday after their special meeting that winter sports will start immediately, and then will continue on throughout the year for the spring and the fall, or the fall and the spring sports after that. And that is IHSA Executive Director Craig Anderson. He joins us now. Craig, good morning, and thank you for coming on.
Good morning, Joe. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, the last couple times you were on with us, you didn't have maybe all the answers you wanted to give us, maybe the answers people wanted to hear. Right now is good news. Kind of walk us through the last 3-4 weeks, how we got to this decision yesterday.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. Amazing things have changed in our perspective when we look back to 3 weeks ago and then where we're at today. We've made tremendous strides, and a lot of that it can be contributed to the folks in Illinois that have done the right thing. Stayed socially distanced and worn their face coverings and caused the positivity rate to go down. And then, the Department of Public Health, I think, has started to work with us and develop a plan where our regions can reach mitigations and reach metrics of which it's returning the opportunity for our students to engage in sports. And so the last couple Fridays announcements by the governor and the Department of Public Health have created the position that we were in yesterday and enabled our board to create a schedule that we feel confident that our schools adhering to the guidelines that we've put forth. And, there's significant mitigations. It's not back to what we traditionally know about basketball with full stands and crowds and those kind of things. But, practices are back. Competitions are on the horizon, and many will start very soon, if not this week. If they started practice last week. So it's we're in a much better position than we were 3 weeks ago. The metrics have changed significantly, and we can only hope that the ground we've gained recently turns into more ground gain in the coming weeks and months, and we'll have expanded opportunities throughout the spring.
We'll get to what other people expected and wanted to happen in a minute. But it's just you and me talking here, Craig. No one else is really listening. Is this what you expected to happen going into the meeting yesterday?
It is. Yeah, I expected us to have a plan. Our staff had developed a framework for a plan that we could have a season with all sports developed. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised at the outcome. The board, rightfully so, we worked together. We made some tweaks to the plan that we had presented. And while there are some overlaps for seasons, we think it's fair for all students to have a season while it's truncated for sure for certain sports. Well, all sports kind of took a step back from what a traditional length of a season might be. But yeah, I did. I thought this is where we could get to, and I'm really excited for our students, for our schools, that we reached that position.
In your statement released on the IHSA website yesterday, according to you here, I recognize that many schools and coaches could likely offer a tweak here or there that would have, in their opinion, make it better for their school or sport. Our board faced an impossible task with a litany of factors. Was there anything? Listen, Craig, I know coaches, and every coach is pretty sure that their sport is the most important one, and that's good. That you should think that as a coach. What kind of concessions were made that maybe annoyed certain factions of the coaching realm that they didn't like that happened?
Yeah, so honestly, I haven't heard, and it's been less than 24 hours. I haven't heard a lot of concern from coaches. I'm sure out there, the idea that we're not going to have a basketball state series, girls or boys, is going to be troubling. Some may have thought, football should have had a couple more games, or that they should have had some form of playoff or postseason. So it's those kind of little things that I think, if you were a sport coach, you could have been thinking, man, a couple more weeks on the front end or a couple more weeks on the back end of my season really would have expanded the experience. And I get it. That's the case. And the spring sports have an argument to say our traditional spring now kind of pushed a little later, but, they could have said, we lost our entire season. So why couldn't we start on our normal schedule in early March and have an entire season? They're giving up a month of what they traditionally not starting until early April. So, yeah, there's definitely some, depending upon your perspective, you could have said, man, I wished for a little more here or there. And I get it. And so, yeah, absolutely, concessions were made. Our board is principals and athletic director, and they carved out what they thought to be the most fair, and did take a look at the loss of the spring sports, and they did get a season far beyond what the winter and where the fall sports are now located are different, and that was really kind of the discussion that spring sports, we're going to look out for them. While we can't give them the full season, we want to give them close to it.
Athletic directors are getting together. I know in the area here, in the Rockford area, I know there's a 10 a.m. meeting of athletic directors. I'm sure that's happening all around the state. How much autonomy does each region have as far as scheduling? Do they have to clear it with you or with the IHSA or with the state? How free are they to make decisions about when and where games are played?
Yeah, honestly, I think they have total autonomy. If they stay within our sport-specific guidelines and how to play the sport safely and conduct competitions, in terms of scheduling, that's really up to them. If they try to have multiple games at a site, thinking underclass and then a varsity game, they're going to have to take steps to make sure that they create timelines that would allow for space and sanitization and all those things that our guidelines require in between the games. And, they're going to have to follow IDPH guidelines when it comes to limiting spectators, depending upon the tier or phase that they're in. So other than that, the scheduling piece, they don't have to bring it back to us. We just ask that they stay within the seasonal guidelines that we issued yesterday. But beyond that, it's really up to them. And then the other thing they have to keep in mind is we're bringing back students that have had some potentially an extremely long break, some more active than others, and so coaches have to be cautious with returning students and recognizing that all of them aren't going to be in the same physical shape returning equally, and so they'll have to balance that and make sure they're safe with their students, getting them back up into the position where they can have competition. So. The scheduling thing is wide open for our schools within the timelines we've established. I think they have a lot of autonomy that way.
A couple questions spawned from what you just said there. You mentioned multiple levels of each sport. I know that was kind of bandied about coaches' circles right now. What are we going to do? A freshman level? Are we going to do a sophomore level? Will there be a JV level? You guys aren't telling them what to do on that one. That's a region by region base, a conference by conference decision, school by school even.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're what they think is feasible within the parameters we've established. That's totally open to schools and how they're going to organize and conduct those things. So, yep, that's really a school decision. Our board made no direction on that, saying that as we conclude this unique year, the board didn't say, well, this is going to be a varsity only competition and organization of teams. Going forward, it's wide open for what the schools can do within our guidelines.
I'm losing track of time, but I don't know if it was last month or a couple months ago when whispers were bandied about basketball specifically being let back into competition. There was word there was going to be a 50-person limit for capacity on the gym, and masks were going to have to be worn during competition. Did you guys address either of those, masks during competition, or what kind of capacity you can have at games?
Yes, and some of that is part of our guidelines, but leaning on, the feedback we've gotten from the Department of Public Health and the guidelines they've instituted. So in regions that are in phase 4, the IDPH has established a 50 spectator limit. They've indicated that when it comes to team personnel, officials, the bench workers, supervision, that's a number of people that is up to the school, as long as the school can provide for areas when students aren't competing that they can be socially distanced on the sideline, up in the bleachers. So, much like we watch on TV where there's expanded bench areas, that's something they'll have to create. But the 50 spectator limit will be part of what we recommend to our schools based upon that guidance from the Department of Public Health.
The 50, I'm sorry, just to be clarified, 50 spectator limit or 50 total in the gym, including, media, team, coaching staff, administration? Which one is it?
Yeah, the feedback we've gotten from IDPH is there's a maximum of 50 spectators separate from those engaged with the activity, administration, participants, officials, coaches, athletic trainers, so on. So schools will have to navigate that based upon their gym space and what they can do. I anticipate there may be some schools that just say, we think it's safer to go without spectators. So our local policy is going to be no spectators. We're going to conduct our event, and that's absolutely their decision. They couldn't move beyond the spectator limit, but they're definitely to make stricter limits on what we've suggested, and IDPH has directed us.
And then one last question before you go on. Talking about the state series, we know you've already decided, winter and fall sports will not have the state series. Our spring sports, because they got their whole season wiped out last year, there's consideration of maybe holding some state series. When will decisions be made on those?
Yeah, that I don't know that timeline. Our next board meeting is scheduled for February 8th. That's our regularly scheduled board meeting. So I anticipate it being on the agenda then. What we'd really like to see is, what next movement is the Department of Public Health maybe going to provide us in expanding the opportunities, assuming that regions continue to trend in a positive direction with their metrics. So it's kind of a balancing act to determine, what's going to be available to us as an association and to our schools regarding expanded opportunities, expanded gatherings as we move outdoors in the spring. Right now, that 50 spectator limit applies if you're indoors or outdoors. And so, a number of those things, our board, I think, will want to know, but yet we need to report to our schools, and schools are going to want to know for scheduling purposes how many weeks. Are we just talking 1 week and the state series is going to be like the fall where we had simply one level of tournament, or could we try to expand it and go a couple other levels, maybe to a state championship, depending upon the sport and the gathering limits. A track and field state final has huge numbers that we gather into one place. And so, right now the guidelines would say we don't have the ability to do that. That obviously wouldn't be recommended, but months from now, early June, maybe that's something we can do. So we didn't set a timeline, but we'll begin discussing in our very next meeting and trying to get a feel or feedback from the Department of Public Health, what that timeline, what those opportunities may be for us.
And then I remember one more while you were talking there. Will everybody be eligible for participation, regardless if school's being taught remotely or in person?
Yes, that's the same conditions that we had in the fall. There's no restrictions for our schools if they're totally remote. If they want to bring students back to campus and organize them to have sports, that's definitely something that our board has approved to allow them to do.
Awesome. Craig, appreciate you coming on. Your definition of a straight shooter. You've been very honest with us whenever you've been on here, and I'm glad to have you on now with some good news, and looking forward to having you on again for even better news in the future. All right?
Yeah, sounds great. I appreciate it. Thanks, Joe.